As Hurricane Florence continues to stall and absolutely pound and decimate the Carolinas, the story about the prisoners actually has confirmed something that I said in a series of videos I did about a month ago. I'm sure everyone is familiar, of course, with the map that has caused so much controversy and angst amongst my viewers. The allegation that I made was this: if the US government was to lose control nationwide in a shit-hits-the-fan situation, that means everybody, not just localized like it is now, everybody. And it would go for 3 days, 5 days, a week and a half. There would be massive prison breaks across the entire country. And where these people would go would not be the populated areas like California, Texas, Florida, Virginia. They would head out into the middle of nowhere, and the reasoning that I gave was thus. Out in the middle of nowhere, there would be very limited security folks, and all of those security folks, because of the situation we were in, would have their hands full. They wouldn't be having time to chase down an escaped prisoner from Texas in Iowa, for example. Because the communication systems will be down, the power systems will be down. They're not going to be IDing everybody. They're not going to be running out in the middle of BFE neighborhood to go chase down this break-in or that break-in or this, that, or that. It's going to be a free-for-all in the center of the country. The reason that I said places like California, Texas, Florida would probably be safer is this. They're going to have the same challenges, but the security forces are so much higher in these areas. Places like California, Texas, Florida have huge military presences, large police forces, and honestly, the people that once they're in for a certain amount of time and they get out, they want to be as far away from where they were incarcerated. It's just a psychological thing as they could possibly be. And that's why places, especially out in the Midwest, where people have large stockpiles of grocery store type items and very little in the way of the ability to defend them long term, would be sitting ducks. That was the whole point here. All right, 3 minutes wasted. The point that I'm making is this. Even in this 2-day or 3-day event, localized event, this article here on courts confirms something. North Carolina evacuated its prison population, but South Carolina didn't. Why? Well, here's why. It says down here, a spokesperson for the South Carolina Department of Corrections defended the decision to leave the inmates in place, saying it's safer to leave the prisoners where they are. Brian Sterling, the director of the South Carolina Department, told the New Yorker that they are not moving McDougal residents because prison evacuations, and here's what you got to pay attention to, posed logistical challenges and public safety concerns. What this means is without the buildings themselves, they have no way to control these people. The people inside those prisons are only being controlled with a full staff and mostly the building. Without the building, they're screwed. Without the people, they're screwed. How do we know that? Well, we go down here and it talks about different hurricanes. Hurricane Maria, prisoner escapes. 4,500 people in Hurricane Irma were abandoned. And look, this was only with, and you're like, well, what happened then? Did they escape? They only had a day. I'm talking about 3 days, 5 days, 7 days, a week. They'll get out. And Katrina, 517 inmates went missing in one day. You mark my words. It'll be a matter of, and like I said, this is where I think a lot of people have misunderstood the videos. If you are the type that's going to, in a situation like this, go grab weapons and start aiming them at every random group of people that approaches your property, and a shit hits the fan situation, they're going to lock you up too. See, this is what a lot of people don't get about this whole mass incarceration thing, this whole FEMA thing, all that people are worried about. People look at this issue and they're like, well, I shouldn't have got locked up to begin with. Wait until they start locking you up. And wait until the shoe's on the other foot. A lot of people don't, they think, well, gosh, prisoners have it so easy because they get all this free stuff. It's not free. The people on the outside, the loved ones, the family members of these people are on the hook for billions of dollars every year. And I'm sure I don't have to tell you folks that this is the prison industry complex is a huge, huge moneymaker. But trust me when I tell you, if they lose half their guards, if they lose power, the food trucks stop showing up. No way. These places will get overrun. Look at what's going on now when they do have the ability to control them with electricity working, with guards showing up, with mass amounts of finance. They have problems now. And they're saying, in essence here, that South Carolina does not have the ability to control their own inmates unless they have these massive facilities. And they need the combination of the people and the facilities. Either one goes, and it's over. This is why they're leaving them in place. Because they're taking the best of the two odds. They don't believe they can control them with their people, so they're going to leave them, because there's going to be no guards. They're not going to leave guards in the path of this storm. When they leave, they're going to leave the place, just locked down. Like a lot of you have said. But and you're right, if it's a 24-hour or 48-hour or maybe even 72-hour event. The allegation that I was making here was a week, 10 days, and not just the Carolinas, where, by the time an inmate would get to Tennessee, he would be running into, fully empowered authorities, state police, and people, looking for them and broadcasting their faces and names all over TV. What I'm talking about is mass, the entire country, all at the same time. EMP loses power, stays down for a week. That's what I'm talking about. Without the ability to communicate, without the guards, and with nobody at the prisons, 2.3 million under lock and key right now. And like I've said before, and I get this pushback a lot, even if it's only 1 in 10 that have malintent, that's still 250,000 people, not including the ones that are already on the outside that are behaving simply because we have this mass security infrastructure that people can pick up the phone, call 911, and a cop will be there in 5 minutes, 10 minutes tops. Even out in the middle of nowhere. You take that away, and it's mafia land. And if you have to decide where to live in mafia land, where it's rule of the jungle versus rule of law, if you think out there, you and Billy Bob and the neighbor down the street with your shotguns are going to hold a neighborhood, you're out of your mind. These guys are professional criminals. Most of these guys work for, and the ones I'm talking about, when I say most of that 10% that I'm talking about here, work for gangs that know how to operate as a group, organized crime. And the center of this country will just be ripe for the taking. Because they're willing to do things you're not willing to do. It's just the way it is. And if I'm going to take a chance on being somewhere, I'm going to take a chance on being someplace where I know there's a very high probability that groups like this are going to be heavily targeted, and there's going to be the resources to do it. California, Texas, Florida, Virginia, New York. Nebraska? Forget it. Kansas? No way. Missouri? Not on your life. So, I will leave it there. And I know I'm going to get a lot of pushback and a lot of disagreement on this. But it's just, you have to look at countries where this has already occurred. Colombia is one of them. There's still, to this day, and I want you guys to think about this for a minute, a country of 40 million people that has been the beneficiary of $500 million a year from the United States every single year, has areas of its territory that it cannot control because of groups like this, heavily financed, powerful paramilitaries. Even with the Colombian military in conjunction with the U.S. military, they can't take entire swaths of their own country because of the terrain, because of the amount of weapons, because they're organized. These people are no joke. And they're here. And they're in this country. And the only thing stopping them is an incredibly complex house of cards infrastructure, security infrastructure, that needs a whole lot of things to be working all at the same time. And it's really good. But if it goes away, even for a little bit of time, and like I said, a week, 10 days, forget it. Putting things back together, not going to happen. Not anytime soon. So just make sure that if you're going to be out here, that you're with a fairly large group of people. People that are willing to do what's necessary. So we'll leave it there. Pray for these people, but I expect to hear stories of, especially in South Carolina, of there more than likely being some escapes because of this. And it'll prove the point once again that they can only hold them so long. We'll leave it there. Like, share, subscribe.